Hi, welcome to the Open Security Summit session in September 2022. And we're here with Michael, who's going to talk us about his insights to basically how to find the next security member of your team, which is definitely an interesting theme in this summit. And it's something that just about everybody in cybersecurity is struggling to find amazing talent. So Michael, over to you.
Thank you. So yeah, I mean, I probably first started hiring when I joined New Day two and a bit years ago. So this is a little bit about me to start off with. So I've normally worked for financial services organizations and security architects. And so I advise a business on this is how you protect your stuff and this is how you build secure things. And at New Day at the moment, I look after the cloud security and application security teams to secure the cloud platform that New Day are building. And like, one of the things actually I'll notice when people are interviewing for a role at New Day in the team is you speak to someone, you go, you ever heard of New Day before? And everybody goes, no. And you go, well, okay, have you heard of the brands? And you go, oh yeah, okay, cool. So, and there's a bit on that actually when it comes to job descriptions in a second. And this year, we've recently grown the application security team from 2 to 7. So we put in requests like, hey, we need more application security engineers. The size of our engineering function was growing very, very quickly, getting overwhelmed. So we got the headcount for 5 extra people. And yeah, so since May, we started hiring for those people. And then we've got like 1 more left to get. But yeah, we've had like rapid hiring recently, which has been pretty cool. And then, yeah, it's just my own quirky take on, hey, here are the jobs I've done at the different places. And here's when I started working there as well. And then my LinkedIn. Okay, so what we're going to cover. So reviewing applicants and candidate CVs, so like the end-to-end process. Obviously, it starts with like writing the job spec. I'll cover a bit about that as well. The kind of process for reviewing applicant CVs, but I'm also going to do this from the perspective of, so as the hiring manager, you think about these things, but also as a candidate who's like looking to get a role and improve your interview performance or get noticed at the CV review stage. So you'll see some of the slides are basically, it'll be like hiring manager perspective on the left, and then the candidate's perspective on the right. So things to think about. There's an example interview process. So basically like just what the different interview stages are that I do and changes that I've made to it. And then there's also like hacks for hiring managers, interviewers. So basically like what can you do to the process? And then interview tips for, again, both the candidate and the hiring manager, and then just any questions that people have at the end. So end-to-end process, pretty typical. So not all of the things are necessarily needed. So obviously you might already have a vacancy, you might have somebody who's left the team and you're looking to replace them. But if I go back to where we started in March this year, I was doing some org team design, and actually that's pretty difficult to find some stuff to go, well, how can you set up your team? How should you set up your team? So I was listening to a lot of podcasts, going out asking people, and you'd be surprised as well when you go around reading a lot of job descriptions and looking at job postings and looking at different people who work at different companies on LinkedIn. You can pull all that together and I've sort of done reconnaissance on what the security teams look like at many places, but I won't say who or how because they probably wouldn't appreciate it. And then you write the job spec as well. And I think one of the things that I did is the job spec was written a certain way when I started working at New Day. And I have gone through ripping up how it was run because it was kind of, call it old and stuffy, but lots of bullet points and stuff. And it just put myself in the shoes of a candidate reading it. And it was just like, it's probably a bit boring. So we try to make it short, sharp, simple. Again, going out, looking at what has worked for other organizations. And looking at what are the things which are relevant, because for some of these roles, and particularly when we're doing for application security engineers, it's super competitive. And I could literally have somebody apply for a role, and then by the time that our people team have reached out to schedule an interview, they say, I've already accepted the job somewhere else. So then that kind of brings it to the bit that we just need to move as quickly as possible as well. So we brief the recruiters, we do the candidate search, and obviously there's different avenues available for people for searching candidates. We work with 2 different agencies who specialize in security. But then I've also worked internally with our people team as well. So spent several hours, many hours, sifting through LinkedIn, so kind of people to reach out to directly, and also attending events like this. So like trying to turn up to like OWASP meetups in London and turning up to other cloud security groups and turning up to this Open Security Summit as well. And just trying to build out the network because, you know, obviously like quite a lot of jobs through referral within the industry as well. And then, yeah, just trying to convince people to come over into our team, even searching internally within New Day, people who might be working in engineering. It's like, do you fancy coming over into security or other parts of the business as well, if we think that there's something that they can do. And then reviewing the applicant profiles, doing the interviewing. The most important thing, or certainly the thing which has had the biggest impact from what I can see over the last couple of months, is making that bit as fast as possible. So there's no point hanging around, and especially at the beginning when you've kind of got more roles and there's no real reason to kind of, again, let's say, hang about for people. It's just make a quick decision, figure out what the next step is going to be, and just move quickly. So we've had examples where we've had an application received on a Wednesday. We actually scheduled the first interview for that day. At the end of that phone call, we said, right, when we're going to do interview number 2, so when are you free? Can you come back in tomorrow? And then actually, while we're on the interview number 2, it was like, okay, it's going really well. Got a good feeling about this. Think we're probably going to make an offer. So then I got my boss to hop on the call. He would normally be covered in interview number 3, and it was done. And then we made an offer a couple of hours later. So it's kind of like, we just made it as super fast as possible. Because as I said, it's competitive. And it's such a shame when you meet somebody who you're like, they're going to be great, they can definitely do the job, and then you lose them because you were too slow. So it's about being like really quick off the mark. And then obviously there's the job offer, and I wanted to put those extra bits, like what happens after you've made the offer, because we've tried to as well change that. So it's really good when you check in with the candidates during the notice period, keep them active, make sure that you're starting to build up a rapport and relationship. I mean, this person's going to be working in the team. And then also make a point of that when they start on their first day, always go in and meet them on their first day. Like, you got to be there in person. And even during the pandemic, when we were all supposed to be working from home, etc., it was like, okay, they're going to come in, they're going to get their laptop. I'm going to go in and meet them. I'm going to show them around the office, make sure they're oriented and set up. And obviously we've got like a buddy that we pair them up with as well. And then you've got to continue to support and grow that person as well. It's kind of important to point out. It doesn't stop there once they're in. So reviewing profiles is basically like just reviewing CVs. So that's the kind of filter. And then depending on how picky, I guess, you are, or where you set the bar, obviously you're going to either be doing more interviewing or you're not going to be doing so much if you've got high standards. So when I started working at New Day, it was the beginning of the pandemic, and I had to hire some people immediately, and it was quite challenging. And also, I didn't really know what I was looking for. So it was like, do you know what? See what's out there. And also the value of the interview. Yes, okay, it takes time, but the more times you do it, the better you get at it. So I was treating it as well as like practice. And the other thing as well is that not all people actually write a really good CV. So you will sometimes come across people who, they might not stand out on paper, but then you speak to them and they're really great communicator and they can really sell themselves. It's just, they might not have the best CV. So it can be a shame if you think that you're missing somebody just because they don't have necessarily the best CV written down. Then for applicants, like if you're submitting an application for a security role or any role, and this is the kind of main thing about the talk, is like, these don't have to be security roles, they can be other roles. Like, this is how people should, in my opinion, be changing how they're doing hiring. It's also some things to bear in mind when you're applying for any job. So you've only got like maybe 30 seconds potentially for your CV to be scanned. So if you've got a lot to go through, like, you're going to pick it up, look at it, and then, you know, naturally the hiring manager's got to scan it, pick out the important points and make a decision. Sometimes you'll take 2 or 3 minutes to read through it. Sometimes you read the whole thing. Quite often you won't read the whole thing. You'll scan it, like, honestly. And the things which are important have got to jump out on the page. Thing which I see like in a lot of CVs is like, if they're like 9 pages, 10 pages, and they're full of listing every single piece of technology that you've worked with, that doesn't work so well. What works a lot better is just a well-written introduction profile summary at the beginning. It's like, who are you? What do you do? What's your unique selling point? And basically, how are you going to do this job? Like, how are you going to show me in the CV that you know what you're doing and you've got the experience and the knowledge to be able to do this, or potentially do it? One thing that I mean, again, me, personal preference, it works for me, is if you link it to your GitHub profiles, any personal pages or blogs. If you've got somebody who's like sitting there, swipe left, swipe right on reviewing CVs, and you go, yes, no, yes, no, you know, obviously taking a little bit more time to review than that. But if I've got to like break out and click on something, it takes me out of the where I can make that decision on it. And basically it buys you more time for me to read and like get a feeling about what you're about and see what you work on. I might find something really interesting. It means that instead of reviewing the CV in like 30, 60 seconds, it's like I've clicked through, I've gone into another thing. I'm now looking at what you put on there for maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. So that's a way of getting like more time to be considered at the CV review stage. Other thing to kind of be aware as an applicant is if you write something on the CV, and particularly like technical things, and you get to an interview stage, I'm going to probe you on it at some point. So just, yeah, I mean, it's a thing we say like most hiring processes, but it's, yeah, depending on what you put in there, I will give you a hard time. If you put threat modeling in there, I'm going to make you do a threat model. And again, I'll talk about that in hacks. So badges, I've seen like a lot of badges come through on CVs recently, and it's not needed. And to be honest, it's distracting and it gets in the way. Like the badge is not the first thing that somebody should notice about you. It's not your unique selling point. Loads of people have the badges. How are you going to be different? Find the thing that's going to make you stand out. So as I kind of put at the beginning, it's what's the important bit that we need to know about you that's going to say, yes, we need to interview this person.
What is a badge?
Badge. So like I've had CVs which have been coming through, which is somebody's put on the header, like next to their name at the top, like, hey, I've got a certified ethical hacker, and then they'll put like the logo for that.
Right, yeah.
Or they'll put like, hey, I've got an AZ500, and they'll put the logo for that. It's like, it's cool if you do all those things and, you know, list them on the certifications, but I just find it super distracting. It's like, if I'm taking 30 to 60 seconds, like at the beginning to scan the CV, and then it's like, I see the badge, it's just distracting. I'd rather just read like the profile summary, which is, you know, well written. Why we interview in the first place. This is from like actually doing the interview process. I see like a lot of people maybe meander off and kind of lose the point of what the interview is in the first place. They ask loads of questions, but I don't necessarily see that the questions are helping to reach the decision which we need to make. And I was probably guilty of this quite a lot at the beginning. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do an interview. I'm going to ask a bunch of questions, but I was refining that over time. And if I go back to the questions I was asking, say, 2.5 years ago, they weren't really helping, I don't think. And I kind of flipped my interview process on its head as well. So like in terms of why we interview in the first place, we're collecting data about each other. So me as a hiring manager, I'm collecting data about the person who's having a conversation with. The applicant is trying to decide, do they want to work at this organization? So, you know, what are the things I need to try and answer is, you know, can this person do the job? That's the main thing. If the person can do the job, or they can potentially do the job, and we can develop them into it, then yes, that's a hire. So the interview is to get through all of that and pick out enough data points that we can make that decision with confidence, or enough to go like, well, we can make it with, you know, yes, we'll take a chance on this person. The other thing on the applicant is obviously we're going to be comparing or competing with other organizations as well. So do they want to work at your place, your company? Do they want to work there above some other offers they have on the table? It's really important to sell the role as well to the person. Like, got to give like a good impression of the team, the culture, like try and help them visualize that they can see themselves working there. I mean, I've been told by people that have joined the team is that they had other offers on the table. In fact, they had financially better offers on the table, but we got them more engaged more quickly, and they were more excited about coming to work in the team that we had, and they liked the challenge and the technology and all the things. So, you know, I put that as we did a good job at describing what the opportunity was and why they should come here and not go somewhere else. So that's the thing. It's trying to help the applicant make up their mind that this is the place to work. And then also, like from our point of view, just get to the point where it's, can the person do the job? If we can get to that, it's like, cool, we can move on. The other one is, this is the interview structure I run through. I know like a lot of candidates will go to places and then I'll speak to them and they'll say, yeah, it's taken like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or it's 7 different interviews and they've spoken to 10 different people. I've tried to keep it as lightweight and lean as possible. So the way I normally run it is, interview 1 is like an initial screening call. So if I'm the hiring manager or there's one person in my team who hires people, it's just a 30-minute call with them. I'll explain what the pound signs are in a minute. First thing, as I said, like not many people have heard of New Day. So the thing I normally ask people is like, well, what have you researched? Trying to gauge like how interested they are in the first place and whether they're conscientious enough to kind of research the role. It's like, why are you applying if you haven't like at least read it? The other thing is, not many people understand New Day, and to be honest, that it's just better to explain it to them. So we've actually like prepared a few slides. Normally we'll pull that up and go, well, this is New Day, this is what we do, and then this is the team structure, and this is how you'll fit in. Trying to find out what the candidate is looking for. So what's going to make the candidate happy and what's going to get them to stay in a job. So yes, I want people to come in, I want to keep them happy as well, and I want to know what's important to them, and I want to get an idea if they'll fit in culturally here as well. So really look for cultural fit. It's not about like face fits, but it's just like, do they share the same values, etc. And then obviously you do the normal stuff, which is reviewing the work experience, and then some light technical probing at this stage. I don't go into too much detail. Interview 2, which we normally try and follow up and quite quickly, is panel interview. We get 3 or 4 people, depending on who's available. We do like a 30-minute deep dive on technical. So that's where we'll get people who are specialists in different areas based on what was in the CV. And then we do 30 minutes on scenario questions. So situation, task, action, result. So like some of the questions that I ask as an example, one of them is, tell me about a time when you messed something up. And it's just finding out like kind of how honest people are. Are they gonna like say something, but more kind of like tell me about when you made a mistake. What did you do? What did you learn from it? What are you gonna do next time? And just seeing, does the person learn from it? Because hey, we all make mistakes. It's just kind of how you deal with them next time. Then the other thing as well that I normally ask is, what is the thing that you're most proud of working on in the last 12 months? Go like, what's the thing that you are happiest about, or give you like the biggest sense of satisfaction or achievement? And then you try and, from that one I like, because you figure out what's important to people or what they like doing, and it kind of plays into what's going to make this person happy, and also trying to understand that, are we going to be able to make that person happy? Like at the same time, I don't necessarily want to end up hiring somebody if I know that it's not going to be a good experience for them, or it's not going to be a good fit for them, if it's because we can't support them enough because they actually are going to be doing some other work and actually we don't need them to do that work, but they've got a tendency to do that. And then part of the panel is, people who are already in the team, so they can give an opinion on, does this person, can they visualize working with the person, and obviously rely on what they think they're technically capable. And then like either throughout the call, I normally ask at the beginning and throughout, and then at the end of the call as well, like anything that the candidate wants to ask, like they should know everything, and continuously encouraged to ask questions about the role. Just really want to make sure that they understand everything that they'll leave, look before you leap. And then interview 3 is a final interview, so 30 minutes with either director of security or in our case CISO, and that's because he needs to interview the person as well. If we can get his availability for interview 2, we do, because we're like, great, we can squash it together and we can save some time. But quite often it will just be that he's not available at the same time as all the other people, and it's just easier to split them up into 2 separate sessions. The last person that we made a hire offer to, we did interview 2, and then basically 2 hours later we ran interview 3. So they weren't quite together, but they were on the same afternoon, and then put the offer out that day. So summary is like 2 hours, 30 minutes for all stages. I think that's quite short compared to most places. Maybe people feel that that's not enough time to judge, but I feel that it is. And I feel that the people who've come in to work here, that it's working out really well for everybody so far. So I think the other thing I'll mention is that like intuition, I don't know if other people get the same feeling, but I normally know like within the first call, like the potential at least to make an offer. Like so there's only been like once or twice where it hasn't worked out. We haven't made an offer, and that's normally because the team, when they've deep dived on technical, there was something lacking. But normally, like in terms of scenario questions, communication, everything on that, like rapport, cultural fit, you can kind of tell pretty quickly. And then I put in the money throughout the thing with its productivity cost, and it's without wanting to kind of go money, but it's just to remind us internally that we need to make the process efficient and use the time valuably. And you know, as well, it's kind of good for the applicant to understand that it does take time out of our day to do it, that we could be doing other things. It is important, we prioritize it, absolutely. But we do have examples sometimes where candidates will just no show for a second interview. And then there's like basically 3 or 4 of us who are on the phone for 10, 15 minutes while we're trying to ring around a recruiter and go, is this person turning up? Sometimes it's, you know, something's happened. There's sometimes there's some people who just ghosted us, which it's, you know, it's a small industry. And you do come across some names sometimes as well. Sorry, it's a lot of text to talk through. So interview tips. So there's things that I do or that I've started doing, and some things actually I wish candidates would do or that they would do differently. So from the interview, one of the objectives I have is I want to maximize the performance of the applicant. So I do that by starting to explain the company, the role. What I find that does is it gives the candidate time to kind of settle into the interview. The pressure is not on them straight away to start answering questions. I don't like interrogating people. I like it to be a conversation. And again, you know, it just gives them time to ease their nerves, and then we start building up a rapport. They get comfortable, and if they come out of their shell, I kind of appreciate that. Interviewing for a role, it can be stressful. People can be nervous, so I like to kind of put their minds at ease and let them relax into it. The other one is said have a few slides to explain the company, the team structure. I think I found myself explaining it too many times, spending like 4 or 5 minutes talking through it. It was like, yeah, I really need some slides and it'd be a lot easier. So it just helps people to understand it better. And then if you know the interview is going really well, and this is what I do on interview number 2, if I got like, yeah, we're going to make this person an offer, then I will interrupt the seat to like ping them a message and go, hey, you free now? Can you jump on the call for 20 minutes? And then we merge interview 2 and 3 together. So if he's free, he will hop on the call, and then like more often than not, give the, yep, cool, green light, make an offer, awesome. And then the other thing is if we do want to move quickly and we've got a good feeling about the candidate, like what used to happen, or what the process we were supposed to follow internally was that you would let the people team, like our internal recruiters, they would reach out and arrange the next stage. And I don't know why it didn't occur to me before, but 2 months ago, I started doing this, which was just, I've literally got the candidate on the phone with their calendar in front of them. I've got my calendar in front of me, just do it myself. So otherwise what would happen is the people team would come back to me and they were like, we're trying to arrange it with this candidate. He's or she or he, they are free at these times. And when are you free? And then it was like, okay, let me try and find space. It's just easier if I do it myself with the candidate while I've got them on the phone. Like there's no need to get somebody else to do it for me. For the applicant, there's a few things which you kind of come across in a post-pandemic world. We still do like a lot of the interview. I think like almost exclusively all of the interviews are done over Teams or basically, you know, video chat. Have a working mic and camera. Got quite a few examples where I just can't hear what the candidate's saying. I'm not saying that they're not necessarily the best candidates, but it might not be a coincidence that 0% of the candidates who've had microphone issues where I can't hear them have gone on to be hired. So, you know, if you're serious about getting a role, it's one of those things where it's like, it would really be a shame if not having a microphone that was working was the thing that was kind of preventing you from getting it. And I do say it to the candidates because I'm sure they're not just interviewing here, they're interviewing at other places as well, but they need to know about it because maybe they don't realize. Interruptions, there's quite a few candidates who will interrupt quite a lot, or if they feel that they didn't answer a question, they'll try and circle back around to it. I mean, you can but only like keep it to a minimum, like only really when you think it's going to add to the conversation. Otherwise, it's super disruptive. I mean, there is an agenda we're trying to follow. Normally got specific questions that we need to get through. We've got a limited amount of time, and it's disruptive, and it makes it kind of hard to build a likability and build that rapport with the candidate. It's difficult because people are really keen to show off what they can do and what they know, but the golden rule is like less is more. Basically, like if we need to ask more questions, if we don't feel we have enough information, we'll follow it up with more questions. We're going to ask more questions if we feel like it. And then the other thing as well is when you ask a question, I've had quite a few times where somebody will start talking, and then they'll keep talking, and then they'll keep talking, and then they'll keep talking. You're like, okay. And sometimes you just have to stop the person. But to be honest, I kind of give a rule as well. Sometimes I'll kind of coach people beforehand. It's like keep answers to maybe 2 minutes maximum. And again, like if we need to know more, if we feel that you haven't given enough, that's fine, we'll ask. But I prefer to be asking for more information than to just be talked at for 10 minutes. So monologues are something which is going to derail the interview process. I shouldn't have to say this one, especially for security roles, but I'll say it because it's happened to me twice, although it's twice over many different jobs. Please don't ever share data on your current or existing employer. So I've had candidates who've been desperate to show me some slides or presentations that they've worked on before. And then when they pulled it up on screen, it's been about an organization that they have worked at or they previously worked at. And it's just, no, like at that point you go, sorry, I can't give you a job. You shouldn't be doing that. And I have to tell them that just please never do that in any interview and ever again, but mention it.
That's why you should have open source contributions, right? So you can show here. That's what.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because when they pull it up and it's branded with some other company, it just makes the whole thing uncomfortable. But yeah, absolutely, it should be open source as long as it's your work and it's released. Then fantastic, show it away, and then it said like link to your GitHub profile, and if it's full of that, that's the best place to put it. And then we can go through it in the interview. But then if somebody was to turn around in the middle of an interview and say, hey, I've got this like profile with all this content, I'll be like, cool, I will check it out and I'll read through it and I'll go through it all. And then actually we can use the rest of the interview to answer other things, and I'll go through the thing and I'll have like extra content to go through later. The other one is, sometimes people need to cancel or they're late. It's just like, please, for applicants, be proactive about it. So like emergencies happen, but there's nothing more frustrating than to have to be calling your recruitment team or an external recruiter or agency and go, they've not shown up, don't know what's happened. Maybe the invite link wasn't working, and then you're told that they had an emergency or something. And it's kind of like once, fine if it's a thing. I've had an instance before though where it's happened twice, and after the second time it's just okay, well, if you can't be reliable to turn up to an interview, it's maybe not the best. So again, it's just like as soon as you know that you're not going to be able to turn up to the thing, obviously assuming you're in a position to be able to let people know, then please do. So what can you do? So there's things which are really difficult to change and things which are easier to change as a hiring manager. Things which are difficult to change is the location and the remote working setup at the place where you're working. So where I am, there is a hybrid working situation arrangement. There is a minimum number of days in the office that people need to work. And it has become a sticking point on some offers previously. We have, relaxed the requirement as much as we can do, but we still have a minimum that we need to hit. And as much as I would like to be able to support, you can work remotely and you can do all the thing, it's not my decision and it's out of my hands and I can't do anything about it. So it can be super frustrating, especially when you found somebody. But I think what it has done is it's changed probably the stage of the conversation where we'll have it, or it means that I will be double checking and absolutely confirming at every step of the process that you understand there is some like needing to come into the office, right? Because I can't go through another situation where somebody turns around and they go, yes, I accept the offer. And then a week later they go, no, I now can't do it because I don't want to come in. Like, okay, fine. The other one is obviously salary, banding, range, benefits. I mean, we're working to a budget, so that's what we've got to live with. Easier to change is job spec. We totally changed the job spec, fantastic. Interview process itself. So I've gone through and completely changed how I do the interviews. Obviously the content I'm asking in there. There's some things that I have to ask. So I've got like a list of questions provided from our people team to say, you've got, select a few out of these, but you have to cover them. The interview speed. So like how long you spend interviewing, and how quickly you interview, or how quickly you arrange the follow-up interviews. So again, like the most impactful thing I think we've done is we've tried to get it so that we can actually turn around from application to, pushing somebody through the entire interview process in a day. If you take a week or 2 or 3 in a competitive industry where we all say that there's talent shortage, or when you've got good talent, like you're literally talking to them, got to go quickly. And again, it comes down to your decision making. You need to practice, get good at what's going to work and what isn't, and then be able to use that decision making to make some fast decisions. The team culture kind of maybe sounds weird, but when we have the panel interview, we've had some of the people who we've interviewed and where it's come across from people who joined and said they can pick up on the team culture, or they can pick up on the happiness of the team in the interview when you're doing the panel stage. So obviously, if you're building a good culture, and I think spelling mistake, culture, sorry, but yeah, team culture is, yeah, it's important, and it does show, and it is transmitted throughout the interview. So again, you need to be trying to sell the place, trying to sell the role to the person you're interviewing. Coaching your team on how to interview. So there are people within my team who they join the interview process, and I want to be in a position to where they can practice doing it as well, and we challenge them more, or kind of giving them opportunities more to be running interviews on their own and getting to a point where they're also good at doing it. So if we build up a team where we're all good at doing interviews, then great, fantastic. I just need to deal with, maybe they'll get too good at interviews and then they'll end up going somewhere else. But oh well, if they do that, then I've obviously done a good job. And then practice interviewing by doing lots of interviews. So yeah, when I first started here, I didn't really know what the best process was for interviewing, and the only way I got better at it, or that I feel I got better at it, was just by doing lots of them. And especially when you're new to the role and where you're trying to sometimes build a team from scratch, it's like the priority is to get the people in to help you out to do the thing. And like at one stage, I was spending literally 50% of my time doing recruitment and interviews 2 years ago, because like it's going to be too much work to do it on your own. So you need the people in. You only get the people in by doing lots of time on recruitment. So challenges and what we can do. So not enough applicants. So working with capable recruiters, I know like in different organizations, it's going to be perhaps more tricky to be able to say, I want to use this agency. In some other organizations, it's easier. But yeah, you need to really find an agency that works well for you. Also, you need to figure out how to direct source and reach out to people directly. So building out your network, and then also turning up to events like this and other events as well, other meetup groups, conferences, and really use that to build out your network, and obviously people that you've worked with before. Marketing your roles. So where you've got them, posting on LinkedIn, like building up your profile, being able to get people to pick up impressions of the roles as well. We do certainly see a spike every time we share the roles or reshare the roles or get somebody in the team to repost it. You get a spike of people who apply. I mean, it works. So do more of it. Can't find the right candidates. So the job specs I was working on when I first started working at New Day were they were already written. So I went with that for a while, and then I rewrote them. And then what we've had to work on is redefining, well, what do we mean by the right candidate? Like, is it even realistic in the first place? I think there's quite a lot of the time where we are trying to find those unicorns, people who can do all the things. And then when you look at it and you break it down, you're like, it's not one person, it's more like 3 or 4. It can be tricky for the first couple of people in the team because you do need some good senior people to start off with. But what we've quickly moved on to is trying to build opportunity for people to come in at more junior levels. And part of that is about putting the support structure in place. So by having those senior people, they can coach people to grow and develop and give you the opportunity to grow and develop people. And what we want to do now is, as we hire people into the team, if people leave, we're probably going to recruit at that entry level. And if somebody senior leaves, we're probably not going to replace them. We're just going to recruit people at the entry level, and we want to continue to develop and move people up. Structure your org design to make hiring easier. So a lot of the application security work or building out the AppSec team is we looked at the org structure back in March, and obviously we're trying to say, hey, we need more people because we're busy. But we also looked at, well, what is the hiring strategy for this going to be? Like, there's no point coming up with a load of job roles which are impossible to hire. So we came up with, well, what's the right number of senior people? What's the right number of less senior people? What's the right number of entry level? And we tried to make it so we had a plan for how we were going to achieve filling all of those roles, because we don't have the budget to hire a senior for everybody, and there's not enough of them. And it's super competitive at that end of the market. And it's just, no, like if we want people to come into it, then we need to create those opportunities. So specifically structured the team design to be able to create those entry level roles. And then not enough time to interview. So if you've got open roles and you don't have enough time to interview, then that's why you don't have enough time to interview, because you've got open roles. So it's a self-perpetuating cycle. So if you're too busy, you don't have enough people, you can only get the people if you do the interviewing. So I would just say, just prioritize it, like put other things on hold and make the time to do the interviewing. Reduce your time to decision for the overall process. So like just go quick. And if you've got a really long time consuming interview process, like it takes like 7 hours, 8 hours, however long, can you make it shorter? Like, does it have to be that long? Can you get to the point of asking the questions that get you to the outcome at the end? And one of the things I think I learned as well is I used to have, again, the same 3-stage interview process. I used to ask questions in increasing difficulty to start off with. It's like, I'll test them on this, and then I'll ask these, and then I'll ask these one. And they went gradually more and more challenging as they went through the different stages. And then they would come up to the end of the second interview, and then something would happen that, well, a question would be asked, and then you kind of reach the limit of the capability. It was like, okay, so I'm spending a lot of time interviewing a lot of people, and I'm only finding out quite a deep, long way into the interview process that something is missing. So I flipped it on its head, went, well, what's the part where people are falling down? It was like, okay. So what I introduced basically was like, right, so near the beginning, we do a threat model, and we role play, and we go, right, so what's this job going to do? AppSec engineer. Okay, right. So they're going to work with development teams. Okay, well, let's just role play. We're a development team. Here's an app design. They've come to us, just do a threat model on it. And they don't necessarily know how to do a threat model, but we get to understand how they think, how they approach the problem, how they structure it, give them 5-10 minutes, think about it, come back, let's talk through it, what controls you're looking for, etc. And if the person can put together something coherent and it makes sense and there's structure and there's a pattern of thinking, then fantastic, they can do it. Sometimes we approach the threat model exercise and somebody just freezes up, and you give a bit of prompting, and you have to give more prompting, and it filters people out. So there are people who can do it, and there are people who can't do it, and it's just, we want people who can do it, or at least they would be able to begin to approach it, and maybe we can develop that further, but you get an idea whether the capability is there or not. And I think that's the end of it, so I can take questions now.
Regarding train your team, is this the slides you're using to train your team?
Oh,
in addition to other things.
It probably will be in future, but it's new. So, but yeah, so what I said earlier about training the team. So if you've not got enough time to interview, it's like, are you or in my case, I was finding I was part of the bottleneck for the interview process. So I delegated quite a lot of running the interviews to the team, but I've had them shadowing me, joining me on the call, and then I rotate it around the team. So I'll ask different people to attend different interviews just to make sure that they're getting a spread or getting a split across it. Got some new members of the team who joined recently as well. I'll kind of give them a couple of months, then once they're settled in, I'll get them on that rotation as well. But I want everyone in the team to have experience of performing interviews, because once they've done it and they're practicing it, they'll be comfortable at it, more confident. I just don't see any reason why they couldn't do it, really.
When you go and develop people, do you grab them from other parts of the organization also?
We've definitely tried. We've got somebody within our engineering function who I think was potentially interested at one point. It's not for lack of trying. It's just, yeah, we've certainly got an ambition to do that. We just haven't been able to do it successfully yet.
I'm also trying to do that, but I mostly fail because when I go, I'm not internal. I'm an external mostly, and when I go to the manager and propose that is a good person. He's interested or she's interested in security. Let us ask him. I get the response, no, that is a very important person in being an architect or whatever, and I'm not allowed to ask them. So, but in case they would come to me and say, I would do this, I think they would be able to do it, but I'm not allowed to ask.
Yeah, it's yeah, I mean, it's a consideration. I think there's probably 2 or 3 people who I have in mind and I would like to go, like, I think they could do it. And, maybe I might be able to convince them that it's something that they could or should move into. But there is also the political situation as well, is who are you going to annoy by stealing somebody from their team? But, at the end of the day, if it's the best thing for the candidate, then it's the best thing for them. I think, yeah, it definitely depends on the organization. Some of them, I think where I am right now, they do encourage internal moving. They would rather that the candidate moves internally than, or the candidate, but they'd rather the team member moves internally than losing them out of the organization completely. So, if somebody wants to do it, that would just say have a conversation with them anyway, but just like maybe have the unofficial conversation and then make sure obviously it goes through all the official channels correctly.
Okay, can you see, thank you for the answers, okay, can you see on the CV before you invite the people, are the talkative people or are they very intrinsic and don't like to talk? So I had some interviews where people came and I thought, I can't use them. I would like to use them, but the only thing I could do with them is putting them in a room and letting them do some technical things, but they can't talk with others. So do you have ways to identify that they are not a good fit for your team because they are not having good social skills?
At the CV stage, I find it difficult. So I find like genuinely like CVs, some of them can look great on paper, and then you interview the person and it's completely different. It's night and day. This is also why I try and keep an open mind with reviewing the CVs and go, just because it's not a well-written CV doesn't necessarily mean that the person might not be worthwhile talking to. So I still try and err on the side of caution. I would rather interview somebody and find out it's not, you can make that first conversation shorter. You can make it a 10-minute conversation. Like, it doesn't have to be a massive investment in time. But yeah, I would rather speak to everybody, spend a little bit more time, and then it makes sure that, if I'm struggling to find somebody to fill the role, it's like, well, have I looked everywhere? Part of looking is interviewing everybody. But yeah, what I do certainly see in CVs is that if somebody's put in their CV and it's 10 pages long and it lists all the technical, that's probably an indicator that that's how the person is going to communicate when they're talking as well.
Okay, I think I'm out of questions.
So
So thank you, by the way. Whenever I thought about something which I could add, mostly you said it by yourself already.
Oh, cool, thanks.
Just chipping on that last one about the CVs, we're having really good success with asking the candidates to submit a presentation about themselves, about the role, about how they're going to approach it, and that already is a much better way to immediately review them. And what I found is that cuts a lot of the noise when you get lots of CVs, because you're already, in a way, you're asking the people to say, hey, we want you to put a bit of effort in this, but if they actually leave it better, like the feedback we have for all the candidates is they really enjoyed it, because we leave them with almost something better for them, because we leave them with a very good presentation. And then what I tend to do in the interview process is I give them guidance. So it's almost like I almost take their presentation and talk to them and say how to improve the presentation, how to make it better. I usually pick up things that they say and going, that is an amazing concept. That is nowhere in your CV and your presentation. Because when, like you mentioned this, that when the people start talking, they actually sometimes show who they are, right? They show the real good nuggets. And what I try to do is say, hey, you need to put that in your presentation, that whoever reviews it sees it. And then what happens is, for the next stages, the people who are going to interview them start by looking at the presentation. So they already have a good sense of what the person is, how it fits together. And, some candidate says, well, I don't have the time to do it. I'm like, well, then, you already showed that you're not that committed, right, to applying. If you're just doing a blank fire to a lot of different roles, then that's kind of not what we look for. But also we have walked the walk a little bit. I've created a lot of videos, I publish them, we give them almost what we look for in those presentations. But I have to say that it really, makes the process a lot more smoother and more effective.
So what impact did you find that they had on the number of applicants coming through? I mean, I can imagine like the quality of the applications goes up probably in measure, vastly. But I guess there's a risk there that there's some people who they will see the extra effort and then they won't apply. But I suppose for some roles, perhaps when it's more competitive for those people, like do you ever find it's a problem, or do you ever find that you have to change your approach, or it's just like, this is the principle, we're sticking to it?
Look, I now have data to show that at both senior level, but also mid and junior level, they do it, right? They do it because, look, the question you want to think about this is, if you're applying for a job, why wouldn't you? Right? Like if you're applying for a job and you say, here's my CV, take it or leave it, really, that's not almost the approach you want to look at. And what we're not doing here is the thing that I think a lot of, big players, Google and all those guys, is almost make insane questions, insane things that are almost private. No, I'm basically saying, hey, instead of having a CV, which is not a good representation, not a good way for us to filter you, can you create a presentation about you? Where, again, people say, I'm good at communicating, I have experience doing this, experience doing that. So say, cool, you should at least be able to string together some screenshots about that, right? Like if you do have experience about threat modeling, give me a mind map, give me 3 screenshots about threat modeling. And immediately I can tell if you know about threat model or if you Google it, right? And you just put it there, right? So, I found that, we having good applicants, right? We have good numbers of applications, but they all have good quality, which is quite interesting. So you eliminate a lot of the sort of the noise from the process.
Do you still take the CV as well, or is it just the presentation instead of?
The CV is important, because you start with, I review the presentation and but then I have a good understanding, and then I just, usually what I want to look for the CVs is just some of the roles, some of the key experiences, or some of the things that are there. But I would say 90% of the time the presentation already tells me a lot about the person, how they communicate, how they think, how they can string the stuff together. But I create a video that talk about what I expect, right? So it's almost like I'm also expecting them to have seen that. I have an interview with the CEO talking about security. I have an interview with the chief data officer, the chief technical officer, right? So I'm almost saying, hey, we've put these materials out there. You should now be looking at the JD and figuring out how you fit into this. Yeah. And it works really well, right?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I find it easier to create slides. Like, hopefully you think they look okay. But I find it easier to create slides than I do to write a CV. Like, I just find writing, like, A4 pages of documents is like, especially that one is always like, I always find it really hard to write it and keep it up to date. But doing slides is like, but it's probably because I think visually, right? So do people think in words, or if they think visually, then yeah, you're gonna be able to extract more from them.
Yeah, but the problem I have with CVs is even assuming that people are not lying, right? Is that are you just finding somebody who happened to be lucky to be on a great team, right? You know, there's people who've been on really good teams, and they can generally say they were involved in these things, but really were they the ones who did it? You know, were they the ones who drove those things? You know, again, it depends where you are, right? You know, you could always go, okay, go deep on this. So I basically tell the team, you need to go deep, right? You know, and you know, have some slides in there that they almost just designed to show that you've been there, you've done that, you got the experience, right? You know how to what's it called, to do whatever that is, right? Whether it's incident response, application security, you know, sec DevOps, you know, risk, you know, information security. You know, you should be able to string together some stuff that you've done, right?
Yeah, I find the especially a couple of years ago, I was finding that there was a lot of candidates who were also falling down at the, you call it like competency questions, but those star-based questions. It's like, okay, explain the situation, like tell me about a time when, and then what did you do about it, and what did you learn from it, and what was the result? But I was finding that a lot of people would go, well, when we were at the company, we had this problem. Like, okay, and then well, then this happened, and then this happened. You're like, okay, but what did you do about, like, what was your part in it? Or were you you were there? I get that, but like, what did you, like, did you do anything, or were you just, you were there at the time?
Exactly, and that's where you know, basically having, you know, that presentation, it's kind of interesting because it almost forces them to put their cards down, and then you can go and they say, okay, so you did this thing, you talk about this, like in incident response, you were involved in this kind of incident, this kind of thing. Okay, now you can zoom in onto it, right? Which is actually good if they really did it, because you're almost priming them for the areas that they are really good at. So, you know, I do find that it works really well.
What do you think of the idea of threat model as homework, like before, or like as a, you know, like taking a technical test away, or as like part of the screening process to go, here's a threat modeling scenario, like just go away, your own answer, what you would come up with, and then when you submit that, we'll go through and review it as part of the next interview stage.
I think it's great.
Might try it.
I know. Look, I think it's you know, those kind of exercises are really powerful, right? Because, you know, come on, somebody who says the threat modeling, right? You know, you call their shots, right? You say, hey, you know, show me one, or do me one, right, in here, right? Because they should be happy to do it. It's only the people who haven't done it, right? And anybody within threat model will have a number of horror stories or success stories about it, right? So.
Well, even though I've had a couple of examples, because so we do like sort of a quick one on the phone or when we're on the call. Had people who say, sorry, I've never done one before, but I'll give it a go. And then they've done great at it. It's just, you know, they either seem to intrinsically know how to do it. But yeah, lots of people who haven't even done it, they're like, they do a fantastic job at doing it. And you go, great, you're a natural.
Yeah. Look, and I think, you know, those things is, you know, especially like one of the things I'm trying to do is hire people outside cybersecurity. And one of the things that's interesting on that one, in fact, the challenge I'm now trying to figure out is how do you measure that that desire, right? How do you measure, so the people that are not a cybersecurity expert but want to come into cybersecurity, and what I'm basically finding is that, you know, there's a lot of great talent that actually will be technically more senior than who you want to hire, right? So let's say you want to hire a senior risk analyst, you should be able to find people who are, you know, I would say from a management and experience and even a project point of view, more senior in a different role, maybe on IT ops, maybe on even, you know, marketing even, or what I say is that I'll give path into cybersecurity if they have the interest. And when it works is when they make the connections between the existing world and cybersecurity, and they get more and more excited about cybersecurity the more they learn. So on your example, like any good architect, any good
Yeah.
engineer or senior engineer can do a threat model with 10 minutes explanation, because they're going to say, oh, this is just architecture diagrams with reading about risk, right? And he reads stride and going, oh, I've been thinking about that, not explicitly, but like this, right? So, yeah, dude, we need to continue this on the panel, right?
Yeah, sure.
Let's continue this in London, actually, since you're in London. But this was great, and your slides are awesome, right? I've been tweeting all the slides, right, as we go along.
Okay,
so
cool. Thank you.
Really cool. All right, I was just finished recording, and then I'll see you next time.
Okay, thank you very much.
For